I think it's time to get started. Welcome, everybody. I hope you are all having a great time here at this fantastic NDC. For the next hour or so, I'm going to be talking about a topic that I consider to be really important, and that many times it doesn't get the attention that it deserves. I'm referring to culture. And the reason I say it's really important, it's because we live nowadays in a highly interconnected world, a highly globalized world, where many countries are turning rapidly into multicultural societies. So now most of us are expected to work in teams where most of the team members come from different backgrounds, from different countries, different places. And this trend has only been further accelerated after the pandemic, because now many teams are going fully remote, fully distributed. So maybe perhaps every single member of the teams is in a different corner of the world. The problem with this is that many times, most of us, even if we are culturally informed, if we have traveled the world, or if we have even lived in another country, we struggle with these cross-cultural complexities that affect our daily interactions. So we might be aware or not, but there are slight differences in communication, in variations in what's considered to be common sense from one culture to another. And this has a deep impact in the way that we understand each other. So today, I'm going to start by, first of all, presenting what we understand by culture, a short introduction about that. And then I will show all of you an incredible tool I found that will help us decode these cultural differences, understand them better. And I will try to show as many examples as possible. Hopefully, some of them are going to be funny, because we will identify ourselves in them. And I will try to give some tips. Some of them are going to be very specific to particular situations, but then I will try to give some more general tips on what things we can do to become better colleagues in this multicultural world we are living in. So most of us probably don't care, let's be honest, but I'm going to introduce myself. Anyways, I needed a slide where I could show my recently created Twitter account so I can get some followers. So here it is. My name is Diego Garcia Lozano. I'm 27 years old. I come from Argentina. I was born, raised, and educated there. And in 2019, 3 years ago already, I moved to Norway. So I've been living in Norway since then, in Stavanger. For those who don't know, it's a small city on the west coast of Norway. Beautiful place, really beautiful place, especially the 2 or 3 days a year when it doesn't rain. It's just amazing. And since when I moved, I started working as a software developer in a Norwegian consultancy company called Miles. And 2.5 years after, so at the beginning of this year, I started working as a cloud developer in Easy. Easy is one of the fastest green tech companies, fastest growing green tech companies in Europe. And it started in 2018 with the 3 Norwegian founders. And they created the world's smartest electric vehicle charger. And now, 4 years later, we are more than 400 employees, distributed in more than 5 countries in Europe. And our vision is to shape the future not only of electricity, but also of business culture. So, enough about me. Let's get started. If you ask Google what is culture, most likely the first definition that you're going to come across with is this one by a famous Dutch psychologist. And he's famous because he was a pioneer in the research of these cross-cultural groups working together. And I particularly like his definition of culture because, first of all, has the word programming in it, so it's very good for a developers conference. But secondly, because it highlights two of the key aspects of what culture is. First, that it is a group phenomenon. So we will never be able to understand what's the Norwegian culture, for example, if we are talking with only one Norwegian person. We will most likely notice his individual traits. If we move to a bigger group, we will most likely be dealing with a group of people that they know each other, and they might have qualities that are the same within that group, but might be different from the rest of the Norwegian country. So it's only when you are looking at the really, really big picture, a large group of Norwegians, then you will stop noticing the individual traits, and you will start noticing what defines them as a group. So that's the first thing. And the second one is that culture can only be understood in relative terms, only can be understood in comparison to other cultures. So you need a big group of Norwegians, and you need to compare it to a big group of Danish or a big group of Dutch people to really, really see what's the Norwegian culture. And before I continue, I would like to make two clarifications, because talking about culture can be a very dangerous topic or sensitive topic to talk about. And the first reason is that we have a deep protective instinct with our own culture. It's almost like talking about someone else's own brother or sister. So I can pretty much say anything about my little brother or sister. I can say, oh, she's so annoying, I can't stand her anymore. But the moment someone else comes and tells me, oh, your sister's being so annoying, I will be, watch out, you don't talk like that about my sister. I can do it, you can't. So it's the same, basically the same with culture. So I am Argentinian. I feel entitled to talk as bitterly as I want about Argentinian culture. But the moment someone else starts talking about it, all my alerts will be on. I will be like, watch out. And the thing is, today I'm going to be talking about many different cultures, and none of them are my own culture, so this is going to be challenging. Please keep an open mind here. And the second reason why it might be a little bit complicated to have a talk about culture is because culture is like this story of the two young fish that are swimming in the ocean, and they suddenly come across this older fish, and the older fish ask, "Good morning, boys, how's the water today?" And the young fish are like, water? What the hell are you talking about? What is water? And that's culture many times. So if we have been swimming ourselves in the water of our own culture for a long time, we will not notice it. We will not be aware of it. So it's only when someone else starts mentioning it that, or when you gain some perspective because you travel abroad and you live for a while abroad, then you start noticing, okay, this seems to be the same for all of us Argentinians as a whole. So sometimes today I might say something that you don't agree with, but keep this in mind as well. And yes, so you might be wondering as well, why is it me that I'm talking about culture? Didn't you just say, Diego, that you are a cloud developer? What do you know about culture? You are supposed to be working with computers. And it's like, yeah, I'm not an expert on the topic at all, but I made a mistake in 2020 at the beginning of Corona. We were in lockdown, and we started having a lot of meetings online. And when people had the cameras on, you could see that they were always showing a lot of books on the back. And I was just moved into Norway. I didn't have any books. And I was like, they will only see my PlayStation on the back. I need to buy some books. So I usually buy many books at once. And when I am shopping for books, I pick up 2 or 3 that I really want to read, and then 20 more that I don't know what I'm going to do with them. They're just based on the cover or Amazon algorithm. So that's what I did. I bought this book, yellow cover, has the culture war on it. You can see a map. So I think it was because I really wanted to travel at that time that I thought this was going to be a travel book. It's kind of like the Lonely Planet type of books where you could, like, when you read them, you could almost teletransport to a different country. So I was expecting to learn about some exotic country, for example, at the end of the world, I will be able to learn about what they eat there, what delicious dishes they have there, and perhaps learn one or two traditions that I will think they are a bit dangerous for me, at least. Like, I don't know, leaving your babies outside on the freezing cold while you are inside having lunch. Yeah, I don't know. I was expecting something like that from this book, but I was completely wrong. I started reading it, and it was a business book. So at the beginning, I was like, oh no, this is going to be boring, perhaps, business book. Of course, I would have seen this coming if I had known who the author was. The author of this book is called Erin Meyer. She is a very famous business professor at INSEAD Business School. It's, for those who don't know, it's like the second most important business school in the world, right after Harvard. And she has published in the Harvard Business School, Business Magazine, Forbes, and she has been even considered to be one of the top 50 more influential thinkers in the world. So definitely this was going to be about business, but I didn't know. But I continued reading, and it turned out to be a fantastic book. It was really interesting and fast to read. I got a lot from it. And what the book was really about is a tool that this professor developed called the culture map. The culture map is a set of 8 different scales or dimensions that represent behaviors where there are cultural gaps that might affect the way we interact with other people. So in each of these scales, the countries have a positioning that can be more towards one side or to the other side, represented 2 extremes. And by comparing the relative positioning of these countries in each of these scales, you can decode or start to understand what are these cultural influences that might be affecting our daily interactions. So the 8 scales, I will not name them all, but it's about how we communicate, how we decide to lead, how we give feedback, how we build trust with each other, what perception do we have of time, do we like confrontation or not. And yeah, I thought it was really interesting. It's full of examples, and it was very interesting to read. But to be honest, I finished it, gave it 5 stars in Goodreads, and moved on. Kind of forgot about it. But then, as the lockdown finished, we started to hang out more with people at work, and we went out for dinner once. At that time, I was working in a team in a project that had a team in Norway, in Stavanger, where they were all Norwegian except me, and we were collaborating with a team in Serbia. So we were all working together, Norway plus me and a Serbian team. And they started to talk about how this collaboration was going. And one of them mentioned that, or told to the others, have you noticed that the Serbians, every single time that they want to ask something work-related, they never, ever, ever go straight to the point? They always start the conversation by saying, hello, how are you? How's your day going? And after that initial chat, then they will ask, can you do this for me, or can you please give me this other thing? And they were all agreeing, all saying like, yeah, this is so true, I have experienced this as well. And I was there in a corner thinking, fuck, I think I might have done this a couple of times as well. Maybe. So, yeah, that got me thinking. And while I was hiding there in the corner, I remember that I have read about this. This was in the book I just read about cultures. So this type of behavior is closely related to one of the scales in this book called trusting, which is how different cultures are used to build trust with each other. So you have, in this scale, the 2 extremes are task-based cultures, and you have relationship-based cultures. In the relationship-based cultures, like Serbia or Argentina, we are used to build trust through getting to know the other person at a deeper level, to talk a lot, to enjoy like a coffee break, dinner, drinks, and focus on how the other person is doing. And if we think that if we can connect with the person, then we will trust them, and then we will work well together. And In task-based cultures, this is more or less the opposite. So business is business. You shouldn't mix that much personal relationships with work relationships, and you build trust with each other if the other person proves to be good at work. If they are reliable, if they deliver in time, then I will trust you. So I could spend a lot of time explaining this, but I think it's better to show a quick example, a video of the best TV show of all time, The Office. If you don't agree, you're wrong. So in this video, you will see Steve Carell on the left. He's like the regional manager of a paper company, and he's trying to convince the head of the county in the US, Lackawanna County, to sell some paper to him. And you have Steve Carell's boss, who is also there trying to get the sale done. And Steve Carell has a clearly very relationship-based approach to this deal, whereas the boss has a more task-based, and you will see.
I thought we could start by going over the needs of the county.
Right. Well, Lackawanna County has not been immune to the slow economic growth over the past 5 years. So for us, the name of the game is budget reduction.
Awesome Blossom.
What?
I think we should share an Awesome Blossom. What do you say? They are awesome. You want to, Christian? Awesome?
Sure.
Okay, it's done. Actually, Megan, may we have an Awesome Blossom, please? Extra awesome. Now it is done.
So,
Hey, I heard
if you have
a very, very funny joke the other day. You want to hear it?
Christian, you don't have to listen to this.
It's okay, I like jokes.
Okay.
Just the one.
Just one joke? Okay. Well, if it's just going to be one, I will think of a different joke. Hysterical. Could you start that one from the beginning?
Sure. There's a transcript between a naval ship and a lighthouse.
The first guy says, well, I'm an astronaut, so I drive a Saturn. And the second guy says, well, I am a pimp, so I drive a cheap escort. And the third guy says, I got you both beat. I'm a proctologist, so I drive a brown probe.
Oh, no. Oh, God, that's funny. I almost had Awesome Blossom coming out of my nose.
Excuse me, can I have a vodka tonic, please?
Oh, that's delicious. I love it.
We would probably be upset with ourselves if we went this whole night without talking business. So, Dunder Mifflin can provide a level of personal service to the county that the warehouse chains just can't match.
Well, we are out to save money.
What's the bottom line?
That's why I wanted a signal between us, so I wouldn't have to just shout nonsense words. That's her fault. Did somebody say baby back ribs?
I don't think Christian has time for that.
I have time.
I want my baby back, baby back, baby back.
I want my baby back, baby back, baby back. I want my baby back, baby back, baby back. I want my
baby back ribs.
Yeah, so I think the differences within those two approaches is very clear there. Here, of course, they are all Americans, but individual differences also are important. And needless to say, Michael Scott, Steve Carell, as the master salesman he closed this deal with this other person because he took the time to connect with the other person. So then the question might come of, okay, what should we do? We are a group of people, we are from different places, we like different things, what to do? So my advice to those who come from a culture, a country where there is more focus on relationships, first of all, if you're doing written communication, like the first example at the beginning, maybe I will not tell you to stop asking how are you, because I cannot do that myself. I feel terrible if I don't write that. I can't force myself to not do that. But at least write it all together. Say, hello, how are you? Hope everything is fine, and ask for the thing. So then you can give the other person the chance to decide, like, do they want to engage in this type of talk, or do they just want to get business done? So that's the first thing. And secondly, if it is the other way, if you have colleagues that are asking you for stuff all the time without like asking you how your day is, or without caring that much about your day, it's not that they don't care about your relationship. It's just that they don't want to waste your time, maybe. And something I have learned here in Norway is that many times, once they ask for something and the business thing is done, then they will say, oh, by the way, how are you doing today? So it is going to come, just need to wait for it. It's just a different order. And for those of you that come from a more task-based culture, what I can recommend is what Antoine said yesterday on the opening keynote. I don't know if you listened to it, but he was explaining what the burn down thing was. How to, burn out the burn, you know what I'm talking about. And the first step was to burn down barriers with each other so that we can connect with other people, that we dare to get to know other people at a deeper level. And I know that many of you think this is a waste of time, especially within my own culture, like nobody cares about this. But I can tell you, the same as it was said yesterday, it will pay off. It will pay off. Because if you take the time to build up meaningful relationships with your coworker, you will start collaborating in a much better way, in a much efficient way. So all the time that you invested, it's going to give positive results in the future. So now what you might be thinking is, yes, the video was very funny. This is like useful information, but isn't it too black and white? Is it correct to just put the point in a map where a country should be placed and that's it? It's like, doesn't personality matter as well? And the answer to that is yes, of course, personality matters. So each individual is different. And the way it's important to know the way that these points in the map, in the culture map, were put. So this business professor had a lot of interviews and questionnaires with a lot of people, and she recorded all the individual responses that, of course, were all different. But a pattern starts to emerge when you start doing this research within one culture. And there's going to be a hump on the responses. And there's going to be this Gauss bell. And the middle of that bell, that's the point in the culture map. But you can see there's a range of responses. So that range is personality, and culture is the range. But of course, in the map, you only see 1 point. So yes, my point with this was this is very useful, but please remember that it's not all black and white. Personality matters as well. But moving on, I would like to explain the next scale. That's communicating. And here it's about how direct different cultures like to communicate with each other. On one extreme, you have the low context, or I like to call them direct communicators, because that makes more sense than low context. And then you have, on the other extreme, the high context, or indirect communicators. And the low context or direct, the low context communicator, the good communicator in that type of culture is someone that delivers the messages in a simple, clear manner. There is no hidden meaning on what you are saying. What you say is what you mean is what you say. There is no way around it. So the more concise, the more simple, that's the better. But on the other hand, on high context cultures, communication is a little bit more nuanced or sophisticated. So there is many layers within one message, and what you want to communicate is many times implied. So actually, you're a good communicator if you don't say things plainly or directly. And it's put a lot of pressure on the listener to pick up what you are trying to say. So it's not all the pressure on the person delivering the message. The listener has to be aware and read what you are trying to say. Again, a video, it's much better to explain this than me. So in here, we're going to see a famous TikTok of the comparison between Irish offering cake to an Irish offering cake to a Sherman, and the other way around, and see how people react to each other.
Would you like a slice of cake? Oh my god, that looks delicious. No, I couldn't possibly. No, stop.
Just have a nice look. Be a little bit naughty.
No,
Go on.
no.
Okay. Take it.
Fine, you're forcing my hand. Okay, fine, I'll take it. Kuchen? Ja, bitte.
Bitteschön.
Dankeschön. Kuchen? Oh my goodness, that looks delicious. No, I couldn't possibly have a slice of it. Wait. Would you like a slice of cake? Oh, yeah, bitte. Oh, okay. You're very confident. Rude, really.
Oh yeah, that's I love this one because there are so many examples of it. And take a look at this tweet I saw, for example. This poor British woman was also living in Germany, and she was waiting for the bus under the rain. And the colleague came, asked if she wanted a ride, and she said, no, thanks. But that clearly meant, yes, I'm getting all wet here. And another example that I found in the book that I really like because I can relate to myself as well is of a Spanish manager, production manager that moved to China. And in there, he needed to run the production on Sunday. So he is asking an employee like, hey, can you come on Sunday, please? We need you. And the Chinese, who comes from a way more indirect culture than the Spanish one, was like, yes, I can, although Sunday is an important day, you know. It's like, okay, why is it important? It's because it's my daughter's birthday. And the Spanish person say, okay, I hope you enjoy your daughter's birthday. And the Chinese said, yeah, thank you, thanks for your understanding. How many of you think that the Chinese person showed up on Sunday? He did not show up. So he said yes, but it was a clear no in his culture. And the exact same situation happened to me, actually, when I first had to give this talk. Because at that time I was working on Miles, I was in the planning committee for a camp, and we were supposed to have a keynote on Saturday. And we had booked a person to give the keynote, but they suddenly canceled on us. So we needed to find a replacement. And one of my bosses at that time asked me, Diego, do you think that you could prepare a keynote about some topic for Saturday? And I said, yes, sure, I can do it. I'm not sure if people will be interested in it. I don't have that much time as well. So yeah, I guess I can do it, but we can maybe have it as a backup and then try to find someone else to do it. So that in Argentina is like a clear no, like I don't want to do this. And his answer was like, oh, fantastic, you can do it. Like, see you on Saturday. I was like, shit. So luckily, thanks to this misunderstanding, is how I ended up doing it. It went well, and I am here now. But it doesn't always have a happy ending. And yeah, and something else I wanted to mention is that in Argentina, at least, we have this very common expression, which is tirar indirectas, is to throw indirects. It's like literally means give hints at something. And we use that as communication all the time. So it's, for example, you want a raise at work, and maybe you are frustrated because you are not getting a raise. So you are talking to a friend, telling him about this situation, and your friend asks, did you tell your boss that you want a raise? No, but I threw him an indirect, many indirects. He hasn't picked them up yet. So it can be frustrating sometimes. Like we are throwing indirects all the time, and if you are in a culture that's more direct, they will not be picking them up. So my recommendation here is that if you come from a more direct culture and you are dealing with indirect speakers, focus a lot on listening to not what is being said, but what is meant. So don't read the textual message. Always find the bigger meaning, what's in the air, kind of. And if you're not sure if you understood correctly, it doesn't hurt always to ask. It's like, what do you really mean? What do you mean by this? Do you actually want to do this on Saturday or not? So doesn't hurt to ask again. And the same the other way around. So for an indirect speaker than as myself, I need to focus on being more transparent sometimes, and also on making sure that people are understanding what I am saying. So it's like, did you get what I just said? Like what I mean? So it's this, yeah, that's usually a good idea. And things get more complicated because there are cultures that are direct or indirect when communicating, but there is another scale, which is how different cultures like to give feedback to each other. And here you will also find direct and indirect negative feedback givers. And it doesn't always match with the other scale. So in a culture where direct negative feedback is appreciated, you want to to provide honest, direct negative feedback. You might even do it in public, and that's totally fine. That's accepted. And you actually you want to get negative feedback directly, because that way you can become a better version of yourself. So if someone is not being honest with you in this type of cultures about what you are doing wrong, then you will get angry as well. But in the indirect negative feedback, we don't like we don't like to tell the hard truth. We always go around it. So we maybe want to say one negative thing, but we wrap it up in two positive ones. That's like a very common thing to do. Or we will, of course, never do it in public, always in private, never in public. And something that is very common is to use something called downgraders. So I think you are slightly wrong. I kind of didn't like this that much. You had a tiny mistake there. And the British people are a master of this art. So they are really good at understatements. So I have one more video here. And this is about a flight, a British pilot that was flying on top of Indonesia. And all of a sudden, the 4 engines on the plane went off because they went through an ash cloud from a volcano nearby. So the plane had no engines, and he needed to communicate to the people there that, yeah, it was a pretty hard situation. And let's see how he said it.
The crew continues throughout this entire descent to try to relight the engines. They take turns trying each engine to see if one would start when the other one wouldn't. But initially, none of them will start. However, when they're putting fuel into the engines are actually igniting. They're just not starting up properly. But that has a secondary effect of showing flames coming out to the back of the engines. And this means that the poor passengers that are sitting at the back of the aircraft, if they were looking out of the wings, would be shown of a display of 4 engines on fire, which would be absolutely terrifying. And with this in mind, Captain Moody decides that he needs to make a PA, right? He needs to say something to the passengers to reassure them. And the PA he makes is probably going to go to the history as one of the most understated PAs ever made.
My intent was to get the attention of the CSD and the cabin crew, and I got the attention of the world's press. And I didn't intend to do that, but I did. And I said, ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Eric Moody again. We have a small problem in that all 4 engines have failed. We're doing our utmost to get them going. I trust you're not in too much distress. And would the CSD please come to the flight deck? And that little bit at the end is a signal in British Airways for the cabin crew to prepare for a crash landing or a ditching.
Yeah, I will be terrified there. But yeah, British people will apparently never say, oh, this is an absolute catastrophe. It's like, we have a tiny problem. Our engines are not starting, but it's fine. And in fact, they are so subtle on giving this type of feedback that when they collaborate with Dutch people that tend to be on the other extreme, they tend to be very, very direct. There are a lot of confusions going on. So this Anglo-Dutch translation guide has been going around in the internet for a while to help them, to help the British and Dutch understand what the British are saying. So I think it's funny because I am a little bit indirect when giving feedback as well. And I see that a lot when giving PR, doing PR reviews. It's like, oh, I think we have a tiny problem here. I'm sure it's my fault for not understanding, when I clearly mean there's no way this is going through. So, yeah. So, tips for this. So I think the most important is that if you are used to direct negative feedback, of giving direct negative feedback, you can continue doing it, but at least do it in private. So the other people will appreciate that a lot. And it doesn't hurt to use 1 or 2 downgraders sometime. Like, yeah, it's a slight mistake instead of this is totally wrong what you did. And on the other side, when an indirect negative feedback person is giving feedback to a more direct person, it might help to explain what is your own approach. Explain, like, listen, I'm going to give you one positive, one negative, and one positive, but you should try to put more weight on the negative one, because, yeah, this is how I give feedback. So talking, we can understand each other. So the next dimension, the next scale is about leading. And here you will find all the Scandinavian countries on one side of this scale, the egalitarian side. So in egalitarian cultures, the boss is more like a facilitator among equals. The boss always wants to be seen as one more of the guys. He will not have an open door policy because he probably doesn't even have a door or an office. He might be sitting in the same open plan as everybody else. And he doesn't care that much about status and so on. And in hierarchical cultures, this is the complete opposite. The boss is almost like a godlike figure that has to have a great power distance with the other employees. And it's expected to set the direction that everybody else has to follow. And it's expected to be a strong leader. So I would say that Argentinian culture is not super hierarchical, but it's definitely way more than the Norwegian one. So I struggle with this quite a bit myself. One maybe stupid example is that whenever I walk into the office and I see that the CEO of my company is there, I usually get really intimidated. I'm like terrified. It's like, oh my God, it's the boss here. So I go walking past and trying to hide myself, and he's like smiling and maybe saying hello to me, and I was like, hi, and trying to run away. And you are maybe thinking, yeah, but bosses are sometimes intimidating, especially if it is like a old, grumpy man. But it's not the case. It's not the case in Easy. Our CEO is this guy, Jonas. He is like a 30 years old something man that likes to wear shorts at the office and is telling everybody else how much he loves them. But still, for me, it's super terrifying. So, sorry, Jonas, because he doesn't like to, he wants to be one more of the guys, but for me, it's difficult. And another example, I don't know if you recognize this woman there. It's from a Danish TV show, Borgen. It's kind of like the Danish House of Cards. So she is, in the TV show, the Prime Minister of Denmark. And she's going to work as the Prime Minister in a bike. How crazy is that? She's the leader of one of the most richest countries in the world, and she's going by bike to work. For me, it's just craziness. Like, I think it's cool, but I'm not used to it. Definitely not. So, yeah, once again, I don't know how Jonas goes to the office. Maybe he goes by car, but this is his office. And the other day, I was walking in my department area where all the cloud developers are, and I saw this. He was having a meeting with 5 of probably the most important people in the company, and they were sitting on the floor. And his office is probably the same size as my office, and he's sitting with the developers on dark rooms on the 2nd floor when he could be on the 5th floor next to the cool marketing people. But no, he's among us. And I still find this very shocking. And something else I wanted to mention around this is that in egalitarian cultures, like in Norway, it's very common this concept of extreme ownership. You should go and do stuff. Don't ask for permission. Do you need a computer? Go buy it. Okay, do I have a budget? No, just buy the computer that you need. Doesn't matter. You take the decision. Okay, I can buy any computer, yes. And same with daily life tasks. And it's like this. No one deciding stuff, I feel. Like you can do whatever sometimes. And I feel that that's very challenging for me. I am used to asking for permission. In fact, when I wanted to practice for this presentation and I wanted to give this talk internally, I didn't ask one person for permission. I asked 2 persons for permission. So we have a cultural department. I asked them, hey, do you think it's fine if I use 1 hour to show this to you guys? And then I asked the person that was organizing the developers that will come here, it's like, hey, can I please do this? When a Norwegian will just have created a calendar invite and get done with it. But yeah, that's not how I'm used to do things. So this is something I really need to work to improve. And the next one, scheduling. So what's our perception of time in different cultures. This one I'm sure everybody has noticed. So there are different cultures that have a more linear perception of time. They like to get things done in a sequential way. It's very important to follow deadlines, and things cannot go out of order. And other times, other cultures in which time is considered to be more flexible. It's fine to take a detour in a meeting and talk about something else for a while. It's fine if deadlines are not accomplished because something else came up. So basically, some cultures are more agile, I would say. So, yeah, I think we just have bad reputation. We should just say that. So all this ends up affecting something that we are all aware of, and is the perception of how late we think it's late. So linear cultures, if you are 1 second late, it's late. Other cultures, it depends. 7 minutes, that's fine. So let's see another short video. This is an Italian guy that married an American woman, and he moved to the US, and they are arriving late for a meeting. And let's see what he thinks about being late.
You're late right now, right?
Anytime we are late, but it's not. But it's 10 minutes. 10 minutes, it's normal.
But you're late.
I'm not late.
10 minutes is late when you're
10
past
minutes is around the acceptable hour.
I definitely agree with him. 10 minutes is nothing, come on. So, but yeah, I understand the frustration, and so I think it's important to always do in Rome as the Romans do. So if you are in a culture that appreciate being in time, you have to thrive for being in time. And if you are in a culture where 5 minutes is okay, don't get impatient. People will arrive, things will get done. And it's funny to see that most countries that consider time to be more flexible tend to be more emergent countries. And one explanation for this is that, let's say, for example, that you have to go to a meeting and you are from Buenos Aires. So you decide to leave early and go by metro, take the subway. But as you head to the subway, you see that there is a strike. So you can't take the subway anymore. So, okay, you might still make it in time, so you take a taxi. But then you get to the highway and there is a huge traffic jam. So then things start to go slower. And when you think that you might make it in time, there was an accident on the highway, the helicopter comes to pick the injured people, and you are like 20 minutes late. So the thing is, life sometimes is a chaos in this type of places. You cannot predict what's going to happen. So you have to adapt to the ever-changing circumstances. So that's why probably people got used to 10 minutes. That's normal, that's kind of expected. And moving on, next one is about persuading. How do we like to convince people, and how do people like to be convinced about stuff? In here you have cultures that are more application first, which means that if they're going to convince someone or get convinced, they want to see examples first. Show me the examples. Show me how can I use this or that. And then maybe if we have time, you can explain me the concepts behind it. What's the theory behind it? But first start with examples, otherwise I will be super bored. And in other cultures, like Argentina again as well, it tends to be more principle first, where we are always taught to present stuff starting with the concepts first, build up the theory, the argumentation, and then at the end, when everything else, all the base is understood, you can then move to the examples and to the applications. So this is how argumentation will go if you are from a principle first culture. So introduce the topic, build up your arguments, address the main concern points, and then at the end, show the conclusions. The problem is that if you have a public that is more application first, they will be sleeping on the second step because they are waiting for the examples. And I think this is really influenced by the way we are taught stuff at school. So, for example, when you're learning a language in Argentina, you start usually with the grammar first and the vocabulary and all these type of rules, and then you move to use it, to talk, to listen, and so on. And in application first countries, sometimes there is a different approach for learning language, which is to just go all in, show you the example, start talking. Don't care about the grammar that much, you will pick it up by using it. And this is the approach used by one of the most famous applications for learning languages that has a pretty intense way of reminding you that you have to do your lesson. It's talking about Duolingo. And in Duolingo, which is an American app, that's how you learn the language. It's very application first. You don't get any grammar, any theory. It's just like, how do I say cheese? It's queso. Done, move to the next. And by repetition, by doing this every single day, you start picking up how to talk in this language. I have almost 700 days in Norwegian, so I'm getting there. And yeah, you all probably know this book, Refactoring by Martin Fowler, and I found it interesting that at the beginning of this book, like the first sentence of the first chapter is like, I don't like when people use principles and conceptual stuff at the beginning. I like to see examples, otherwise I get sleepy. And Martin Fowler is British, so more used again to see the uses of stuff first. So no wonder that he did this for his book. So tips around this topic is know your audience. So if you're going to be presenting against application first thinkers, start with examples, do the other way around if it is more principle first. The problem is, more often than not, you will have a mixed audience. You will have people that from different places. So what to do then? So an idea is to do what at least I try to do right now, in which I mix a little bit of theory or principles or concepts, and then an example. Principles, example. So when people are getting the principle first, the application first thinkers are getting bored, I wake them up with an example, funny video, and then continue. So that's usually a good approach. I'm not sure if I succeeded or not, but that was my intention at least. And now I am soon running out of time. And to be honest, I couldn't find that many funny memes or videos for the last two scales, so I'm going to go fast through them. One of them is deciding, so it's how different cultures like to take decisions. Some of them are more consensual, so they like to reach a group agreement, and others are more top-down, so the boss decides. What the boss says, that's it. And this is very, very related to the leading scale. So most cultures that are egalitarian are also consensual, and those cultures that are hierarchical are more top-down. But there are some exceptions. So the US, for example, has a kind of egalitarian culture, not as much as Scandinavia, of course, but considering the whole world, it does. And yet, for taking decisions, it's usually what the boss says, what counts. That's it. So I might have an open door policy. You might address me by my first name. I might be sitting next to you, but it's me who's taking the shot. He's taking the shots. And you have examples on the other way as well. So Germany, for example, is a very hierarchical culture. So, but despite that, they like to reach agreements in a consensual way. So everybody's voice counts, and everybody has to agree on something before moving on. And last scale I'm missing is about disagreeing. So it's how much cultures like to confront each other when they can't agree on stuff. So some cultures are more confrontational than others. In the confrontational cultures, it's a good sign to have a debate, a heated argument in a room, because they think that that's going to be a positive thing for the group. But in countries that prefer to avoid confrontation, they don't want heated arguments at all, because that might impact negatively in the group. So they try at all costs to avoid this type of situations, and many times they can take personal offense when someone else criticizes your ideas, not yourself, but your ideas, because of this thing of not liking confrontation. So that's it. Those are the 8 scales. And before finishing, I want to sum up what I think are the 3 most important takeaways that I want all of you to get from this talk. The first one, and very important, is that the first step to become better colleagues is to acknowledge culture and acknowledge these cultural differences, to know that they exist, and to try to find our own cultural blind spots. Because the moment we start to identify what is common in our own culture and how it compares to other, at that moment, we can start a dialogue, open a dialogue, and start understanding each other better. So I think what this culture map book did greatly for me is not really like the tool itself or the small tips that gave there and here and there. It was mostly to bring this topic to my attention and to see this, it allowed me to see these cultural differences in a more clear way. So I encourage all of you to talk about these things in your teams, in your groups, because the more we talk about them, the more we will understand from each other. The second takeaway that I also try to mention at the beginning is that please don't stereotype, don't put people into boxes with general characteristics based on their cultures. So it sounds counterintuitive because I spent the last hour talking about culture, but please don't do that. This is not why I'm doing this. So people are different. So we are individuals. Each of us is its own different world. So you shouldn't go out there with the culture map in one hand and saying, oh, you are from Norway, you are going to be task-based, or you are Argentinian, you're going to be late. No, don't do that. But at the same time, many people with good intentions that they don't want to stereotype, they decide to ignore culture completely. It's like, I don't care about culture. People are different. There's no need to learn about cultural differences because personality is all that matters. And that's also wrong, because the mistake that we are going to be making if we decide to ignore culture and cultural differences is to judge people through the lenses of our own culture. That's going to be our default mechanism. So, and that's totally wrong as well. So the next time that, for example, you are planning a meeting with a client that you want to sign, and you decide to bring with you the technical expert in your team to come along in this meeting. And maybe these technical experts come from a more hierarchical culture. And you start the meeting and you see that this person is not talking, is not participating at all. If you only focus on personality, you might think this person is shy, or this person didn't come prepared, he's not helping at all. But if you remember that there might be cultural differences, you will understand that what this person is doing is waiting for you as the leader of this, as a senior person in this meeting, to give him the word, because he will not speak unless you tell him to speak, because he's used to that. The same goes to if you're having a one-to-one meeting with your manager, and this manager is giving you a lot of very harsh negative feedback, and you're not used to it. Remember that it doesn't mean that this person is an asshole. What it probably means is that they are from a different culture where negative feedback is actually appreciated, and you want to receive this negative feedback like this because that way you can become a better person. And last but not least important, if you have a Latin American colleague like myself, and you see that that person is arriving a couple of minutes late sometimes, remember, it's not that he doesn't care about your time, it's just that he comes from a flexible time culture. Thank you. Yes, so there are some minutes left, but if you have some questions, we can take it here or outside. Thank you very much.